Welcome, everybody, and welcome back to the Photo Memoirs. I'm Don, and I'm sharing with you today some submitted photos by a photographer from the Philippines by the name of Reyjhun Catipunan. And I really hope I'm pronouncing your name right. And if I'm incorrect, I'm very sorry about that. Nonetheless, you took some great photographs on the street there near your home, and so I'm happy to take a look at those photographs and review them with you today. So I hope that it's beneficial both for Rayjun and also for the rest of you that are watching as well. So let's take a look at the work that he's done. This is our first photograph, beautiful photograph. Okay, I have uh, no information uh, on, what camera he used or what lens he used or any of the details here, right? The exposure, the settings, I have no idea what they are. Uh, it's if possible when you're submitting photographs, if you can keep the metadata there, and then I can also take a look and see. In some cases, I can see what you did and what you could do to improve the photograph when it comes to the exposure. But in this case, I can see that the exposure is pretty good, so that's not too big of a problem. So, all right, we can see here, right, if we take a look, none of his darks are too dark and none of his whites are lost or anything like that. So very good on that respect. So it's not a big deal that I don't have that information available to the metadata. But let's take a look at the photograph and see what we can kind of take away. So I like the photograph. I like the subject. It's like a cool motorcycle and man there. It's kind of a wet day, it looks like. It doesn't look like it's raining, but I can definitely see that the ground's all wet and he's kind of wearing this cool little rain suit. So it's just kind of really neat to kind of see. This is not a scene that I get to uh, look at every day. So for me, it's quite interesting. So I thank you for sharing the photos with me, and I can kind of taste a little bit of life in the Philippines based on the photos that you're sending me. So this is great. Uh, if I were to kind of share my thoughts, um, I don't really know that this foreground is really necessary, and I'm not really sure it really adds much to the image. And a lot of times, having something in the foreground can really add something to the image, but I'm a little bit lost, on you know on this one. When I think about something in the foreground, I might think, um, like for example, there's a beautiful landscape, and then there's kind of flowers in the foreground that are kind of a little bit out of focus, but they're there, and you can tell that they're flowers, and then it just really works with that beautiful landscape that's behind it. That's kind of the idea that I envision with that foreground kind of work. And it works really well as well with portraits and other different photographs, of course, including a street photography or documentary photography. But I'm not sure, what it is that you're photographing. Is this another motorcycle? It looks like kind of like a black tarp or something that's just kind of here. And I'm not sure that it adds a very special effect to the image. We kind of just got like an angle across here, and then suddenly we have this little, big triangle that sticks up over here. And I'm not sure it's really having the effect, at least to my eyes. I'm not sure if it's really going to have the effect that you want it to have. The position of the motorcycle, right? So if I were trying to take this photograph and I seen this foreground and I position myself to take this photograph as something passed by at this particular moment, that's a possibility, and Rayjun could have done that. And if that's the case, I'd like to say, like, yeah, not only is the foreground something that I would have wanted to avoid, but I would have also wanted to avoid this little carriage here being overlapped in the background. All right, so it's a very big, rectangular buggy there, and I just don't. I wouldn't want to have those kind of jumbled up one behind the other kind of thing. To me, that kind of gets distracting, right? When we see this motorcycle, see this man here, uh, of course we catch the man, but our attention is also drawn backwards to this, right? Especially with the yellow there. And of course, we can be drawn to these cones in the back, which are a little bit distracting, but it's not a huge deal. It's not a big deal, these, because they're pretty small. But this one is pretty large and it's right behind our motorcycle. So that can kind of draw away some of our attention. So if I were looking at this scene, and if this is a scene that you had more time to kind of think about and position yourself before that motorcycle came across, then I would have tried to come a little bit to the right or a little bit more toward the left and got myself away from this buggy. Of course, the buildings in the background and stuff like that, there's something it's hard to avoid, but maybe if there was a building or a building on this side without that kind of large buggy there, it could have just been the building, and I think that would have been much better, in my opinion. And if you have any thoughts as well for Reyjhun, just go ahead and leave him your thoughts below. And not only my opinion, but your thoughts could also be beneficial as well. So you can add to the conversation that way. Same thing. I see that you're loving this kind of angle thing, which is all right. You're loving the foreground. Yeah, and again, with this one, I'm not sure it's doing exactly what you want it to. I'm a little bit thrown off by the angle um, because the boy is going that way and you're angled also this way. So we catch less of the subject, right? If possible, you want to, there's a mosquito on here. If you are on an angle, if you have no choice but to shoot on an angle, chances are that you want to have your subject coming towards that angle, right? If I'm shooting this way, I want my subject coming this way so that I can catch more of the view of his face or of his body, where it looks like he's leaving the frame and he's going the same way as I'm angled. So I'm not getting the most pleasant view from that. Otherwise, it's a nicer subject. If you caught more of a view of him, maybe even in this case, you can get a few feet, a few meters, even closer to the subject, and maybe if you caught him more straight on with the trees and these little sheds in the background, I think that would have worked nice. Or being on the other side, and as he's approaching, get it from an angle here, and then you can have kind of a similar background with the trees and the sheds, and you can catch more of his face. I think that would have been good. And I'm just trying to be just as honest as I can, and I just want to be helpful. So I hope you take what I'm saying as a to heart, but also just recognize that everybody views things a little differently, but also try to pick up on the things that you can agree with and that you think, okay, this could be a little bit better. And then those things, take those things with you and then try to work on them, because, I want to help you. I want you to improve in your photography, but some parts is a creative decision. So some things maybe you just disagree with, and that's fine. That's, it's up to you. And you can even ask, say you disagree with this one part, then you can, I heard this from somebody else. What do you think? And just ask a few other people for their honest opinion. Don't just ask somebody that's gonna tell you, yeah, that's awesome, you're great, you're amazing. Don't ask that person that's gonna say that you're the best at everything. Ask the person that will be more honest and more open with you. And sometimes I ask my wife, and the answers that I get sometimes are very frustrating. what do you think of this picture? That. So sometimes I can be very happy about the image, and then I ask her, and then I feel great if she says, "Yeah, that looks really nice." But if she tells me, "Oh, that's not very good," then I feel a little bad. But I think the honesty is helpful. So just take your work that way as well. I just saw what I'm sorry, I have presets on the side here. And I don't know why, but I really love this in black and white. And I'm sorry for that. I didn't actually mean to first press on this, but when I did, I'm thinking, wow, that's great. But he has it in color here. I'm kind of wondering, what the story is that you want to tell. So is this a kitchen here, or they're preparing for making a meal or something like that? Maybe a restaurant. Okay, so we can tell that there are people in the background, and you've come up and you've taken this photograph. I like the atmosphere, right? The lights here, the shiny metals, those. I think the reflections on the metals too make it very attractive and very fun to play around and practice photography with. The back white umbrella can be a little bit distracting. And as you can see here, if I go to the highlights, you can see that it's way, way, way overblown. Even you see the red areas that I have on my screen now, they're saying that the data, um, it's just so overexposed in these areas that the data is completely gone. It's lost forever. So even, if you come back to an editing program like Lightroom, you will never be able to bring back or edit back any part of these blown up spaces, right? So when you're taking your photo, you have to be careful. And what I like to do is, if you have a camera, it's going to be helpful. If you have a camera, use your histogram. You should be able to set up your settings where you can look at the histogram either while you're taking the photograph or of the photograph, and then you'll be able to see if it's way over here on the right side of the histogram. It's going up here. That means that it's some parts are overblown, and if it's all the way over here off the side, which is not in this photograph, it means that the darks, the blacks, are too dark that they're also gone. So what you want to do is in most cases, you want to have your photograph in between, and then it's going to be all kinds of different shapes in between these two sides, so that you're not going to have something overblown and you're not going to have something too underexposed that it's not going to have any data. So here we have overblown here on the metal, all right, on the lights, in the sky, and on these parasols. So I think if you exposed your photograph just a little bit less, you would have been able to get that perfect exposure without, say even if you had to bring it back to here, right? And then what happens is when you come back into the editing, you can adjust everything as needed. All right, so something like that, right? So you didn't have anything overexposed, but still you have virtually the same image. And then of course these lights would look very different, because if you capture that in camera, they'll still have data there to work with. Now there's no data to work with, so there's nothing that can be really done to fix that. The nice subjects that metal, shiny objects are always fun. It looks like this is the same place. Okay. So I want to say something similar about this photograph and about this photograph. Uh, One of the things that most people getting into photography, especially taking photographs of strangers or on the street, is they have the tendency to practice a lot, which is great. Practice, 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 and do it at first. But what they'll usually do is they'll practice by taking the photographs of people with their backs turned, right? Or they'll take a photo from behind, which is not uh, is not that pleasing to look at. And what we want to see usually when you look at the photo is you want to see the person, you want to see their face, you want to see the expression, you want to see what they're doing, right? Which is hard to see, if the photograph is, of the back. And I know it's not here, that's not the case here, of course, but uh, the main subject is on a very side angle, right, from the side, which I'm not sure works that great. And again, I'm just trying to be honest with you, right? If you're trying to take a photograph of this woman, right, even adjusting yourself and going to the other side, maybe catch more of her, or more directly on a more direct angle, or less of an angle. Even if you were a few feet left, then you would have caught more of her instead of a direct side shot. I think practicing is good. So if you need to, of course, go ahead, practice from the side, practice from the back. Just get your practice in and practice, but work up the courage to also try to, you know, do a more directed shot or less from the side. You get more of an angle that's going to look more towards me or the subject, or more directly in front. Especially when people are sitting and relaxing, you might have a better opportunity to take a photograph. You have to really work up some courage and try to attempt that. And the same thing with this photograph, right? Okay, the same thing. From the back, right? Okay, nice. It's a couple. They're walking down the street. He's got his arm around her. Very nice, lovely couple. But if we can see more of them, then it gives us, it pulls us in, right? If we were to see a lovely couple, they're walking shoulder and shoulder together down the road, and we've seen their expressions on their face, and they're smiling, and they're talking to each other, something like that, then people are automatically drawn to that. They really love that. And that's because we see their face, we see their reaction to it and their emotions, and that gets us involved as well. Whereas the side shot, or in this case the angle is also towards the back, it's not the case. And sometimes we might take like a side shot, or you know uh, a side or a back shot, because they have like a beautiful atmosphere that we want to just capture, right? The reason that we're capturing is that we want to capture that atmosphere, right? And if that's the case, it's generally much better, because our focus is not on that couple or that person, but more of the atmosphere, which in that case would be great. But in this case, right, we're not really concerned about the atmosphere. You're trying to photograph the couple, the main subject right here. So that's why I'm saying it will be more beneficial. And we have your metadata here on this photograph. Could you shot at f1.8 at 1/60th of a second with ISO 4000 with the 50 millimeter lens, which is good. Yeah. Wow. It's really dark out. And this is what I was talking about. The darks are so dark that the lost data. And sometimes, even I'll do that, especially when it comes to night photographs. I'll have portions of the photograph that are just completely lost data, and I'm fine with that as long as the subject is working all right. Okay, very cool. The lights. ISO 2000, 50mm, f1.8, 1/640th of a second. Okay, so when it comes to your settings here, I would have brought your shutter speed way down. Bring your shutter speed way down. And when you do that, you bring more light into your camera. I think you could have increased your aperture. Stop it down a little bit because f1.8 is a little bit difficult to kind of get your focus. But nevertheless, I think you did your focus okay, not too bad. But you can bring it up just a little bit more. Just stop it down a little bit, maybe f2.8 or something like that, so that you can, have some room to play around. And I don't think it would have made a huge difference in the long run. And then you should be able to bring your ISO down, which will work a lot better with lessening the grain and stuff like that. So that could have been something that you could have done. But other than that, I think you just took a nice shot here, kind of just capturing the atmosphere more or less at night there. All right, moving on here to the next photograph. Okay, just atmosphere. Not a whole lot to kind of go on here. Late nights, wet nights. You're out there photographing, so that's great. Right, rain or shine, we're photographing. That's good. Okay, I love your subject here. Okay, so I love, yeah, it makes a difference. What I was saying before, he's looking at you. It makes a difference, a big difference. It's a lot better than kind of the side shot, direct the side shot without any interaction, or back shot, much better. It would have been good. I think you're working with a 50mm lens. Even getting closer could have helped you, my friend. I think getting closer could have stepped up here if he's friendly and he's okay with it, and getting a closer shot. I would have. I think that could have been really, really good. But it's okay. I think you're just practicing more or less, right? Getting into the swing of things. And as you get more comfortable out there practicing, then work on getting a little bit closer, a little bit closer, a little bit closer, and interact more and, draw us into the photograph, right? So in the frame, you figure, right, this top part and this bottom part, right? That's a big portion of the frame. And then your subject is pretty small in the overall scheme of things. All right, so you have a lot of room to kind of work with. Of course, I do like, incorporating the environment with the photograph, which is excellent. But, the back environment's great, but the front, yeah, there's no real, reason to really include the front here. So if you stepped up a few more steps to get rid of this truck here and get rid of this puddle on the ground, and then focus more on the man and also the background, I think that could have been a lot nicer. And you have your settings here as well. And you're stuck at f1.8 for some reason. You're stuck at 1.8. Adjust your aperture. Adjust your aperture. That's something you have to get used to. Play with all four settings. You have ISO on a bright sunny day, ISO 400. No worries, you can leave that there. But you could have brought your aperture. You could stopped it down. F4, right, or even F8. You had a lot of room, and then you could have brought the shutter speed down to 125, and you could have adjusted your settings to make the proper exposure. I'll do some videos as well to explain, what all of these do and what they add to your photograph. But learning the exposure triangle is what they call it, is going to be crucial for improving your photography. That's some of the basic things that you need to really learn near the beginning, and then you can get creative with how you want to photograph, how you want your photographs to look, and then you can make adjustments to achieve that. So understanding the three exposure settings: the ISO, which is the camera is sensitivity, and then your aperture, which is kind of like a little circular thing that opens and closes to let light in, or let light, let a little bit or a lot of light into the lens. And then the shutter speed is how fast the that that when you click to take a picture, it's either going to be very fast, very quick, down and up, or it's going to be very long, which is going to, if it's longer, it's going to bring a lot of light in, and if it's shorter, it's going to bring only a little bit of light. So here it's really fast, which brings very little light in, and then f1.8, which brings a lot of light in, and then ISO 400, which brings, just adjusts that sensitivity a little bit, which also brings up the light of the photograph. Again, but if you balance these a different way, you can have a complete different effect on your photograph, which we'll have to get into deeper details in some other videos. I love this photograph. I think this is really well done. Very nice. Okay, and when we look at the photograph, you see here, we're looking for your focus. You see how it's out of focus here? It's out of focus here. It's out of focus here. The arm is out of focus. The face is out of focus. And the steering wheel is in focus. The steering wheel is in focus, and the rest is not in focus. Right? So you got your focus here on the steering wheel. And when you're and that's one of the things with this f1.8 is you have a narrow field of focus. So, it's going to be harder to get your focus. And when you get your focus, it's very narrow. It's going to be only a small portion of the photograph. So it's only this part here that's in focus. And then, the man here is out of focus. Whereas if you were shooting at an aperture of, say, 6.3 or 7.1, or at an aperture of 8, or even more, aperture of f10 or 11, then chances are that this whole truck, this man, is going to be in very good focus, because that depth of field is going to be so much wider that you'll get a lot more in focus, and it's going to be just a lot nicer, a lot more pleasant to kind of look at. And this woman will still be out of focus because she's much closer to you, but still she'll be in better focus than she is now, but a little bit still out of focus. The back would still be a little bit out of focus as well. Okay. Overall, I like this image though. Here, I think getting closer, it could have done you a lot of good. Like I've mentioned in some of your other photographs, getting closer, incorporating the man and maybe more of this here, see what he's kind of doing, could have been good. And again, with your settings, could have helped you a lot. All right, the f1.8 is not necessary. You could have brought it down. You could have lowered your shutter speed again, which you're shooting very fast, 1/5000th of a second. That could have been brought down. Your ISO could have been brought down, but if you absolutely needed it for, say, you wanted a very narrow aperture, then you could have kept it up a little bit like this. But still, there's a lot that I think you can learn when it comes to the settings that can really go a long way in helping you. Okay, you've adjusted your settings here. It looks like you have edited this. because this is way up here, but then suddenly brought down. So I think you maybe underexposed this image and then you've corrected it by, adjusting it in maybe Lightroom or a similar editing software. But that's all right. Again, closer could have helped you. And again, I'm trying to look for that straight on or at least towards you angle. It helped you a lot. Okay. So what I said earlier about the straight on angle or about the more on straight, because it has to do with the subject, right? You're trying to photograph this man, you're trying to photograph this couple. But in a photograph like this, it's not necessarily just this man as your subject, but more like the atmosphere. So I think that is much better because you got the atmosphere. It's like, yes, we have the subject, but the subject is not the only thing to the photograph, it's the whole atmosphere. So it makes a lot more sense. And a side shot, I think, in this case, works really, really well. And I think it's okay. You did very well. You're playing around with your aperture. Again, your aperture could have been a lot narrower. You could have really brought that in and played. Could have got a nicer depth of field there. Right. If you focused on him at f2.5 there, then the background is all out of focus. And if you're trying to capture that kind of scenery, right, the back is the background that you want to incorporate, right, and that atmosphere that you want to capture, then that narrow aperture could have made that better for you because it would have widened, again, it would have widened that depth of field, which means the back would be more clear and more in focus. I think if you were more to the side, you could have caught this more straight on. We can tell that you're shooting a little bit on an angle just based on the building, and then you got the lines that are here and then they're kind of a little bit down. That's because you're shooting on the angle like this. We can see it at the top as well with the pole and the lines and the shed and the in the road here as well. All right, so if you're trying to frame it up more centered, more straight, and try to get that more straight approach. Other than that, I think wonderful photograph. Good job. Okay. Again, I think you're just out practicing. You're just out practicing. You're getting used to your camera. You're trying to take pictures of the subjects that you see in this town, which is great. You're out for a photo walk. Excellent. I don't know what the people are doing. All right. I don't know what they're doing or what they're going, or do they have a connection to this truck? Is that why they're standing there? Is that why you photographed at this time? Those are kind of the things that can go through your mind when you see the photograph of the people standing right beside the truck, right in front of the truck. You got the mother standing, and then right behind her is the son, right? So you got this kind of overlapping, and then right behind him is a tree, right? So you got a lot of overlapping images. And then you got, the woman and the son, and they're standing very close to the truck, but on the other side of them, you got nothing, right? It's a kind of open space, right? So there's so much kind of jumbled together, and then suddenly a lot of open space, right? So you want to figure out like what are you trying to tell, right? So if you're trying to focus on this woman and the son, see, that's what you want to photograph. Then you should be up by the road, behind the truck. And as that truck drives past, you can come in closer to the mother and the son, and you can get a closer photograph of them. And then the background of your photograph would be without this tree. You'd actually see the sun in the photograph, and then the background would be this side of the photograph, which would have been, I think, a little nice. Okay, the colors look good. That overlapping characters here, but that's, what can you do in this kind of situation? But from the back, the colors, the shades of black and white look great. Back kind of shot, again, nothing too particularly special. Okay, and then you got another photograph of the police officer. Okay, this looks all right. I think you could have, again, been more centered with it and photographed more straight on, especially if he's not kind of paying much attention to you. You might have been able to take advantages of that just a little bit, just kind of get in there more and try to play with it a little bit more. Okay, so that's my thoughts on these photographs, and thank you so much for submitting your photographs. I hope you'll continue practicing, and I'm sure you're definitely going to get better. If there's any part of this that really stood out for you, of course, take that and try to apply it to your photography, and I hope that will really help you. So thank you again for submitting your images, and I hope this is beneficial for everybody else as well. So you can submit your photographs. I'm back Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. So you submit your images, and we'll be doing, again, these videos for the rest of the week as well. So just get in touch with me through, send me a message here on YouTube, Facebook, or through email or through my website. And then you can send me your images. I'll include them in the next upcoming review videos. So I look forward to that, and I'll see you guys in the next video.